Picture this. You are 20 years old. You walk onto a clay court in Madrid, and before you even bounce the first ball, someone tells you he's here. Not sitting casually, not scrolling his phone. Rafael Nadal, 14 French Open titles. The undisputed king of clay is in those stands, and he has not taken his eyes off you since you walked through the gate. He retired in November 2024. He has nothing left to prove. No rankings to chase, no trophies to hunt, no rivals left to conquer. And yet, on this particular afternoon in Madrid, the greatest clay court player who ever lived is choosing to spend his time watching a 20-year-old girl from the Philippines. People who know Nadal recognize the look on his face immediately. It is not simple admiration. It runs much deeper than that. It is recognition. The look of someone who sees a reflection of something they once lived themselves. That is where the story begins. And by the time we reach the end of it, you will never see Alexandria quite the same way again. But to understand Madrid in 2026, we have to go back 8 years to a small Spanish island and a 13-year-old girl who arrived there carrying everything she had. Mallorca, 2018. A teenager from Southeast Asia steps through the gates of the Rafael Nadal Academy with a suitcase, a dream, and a silence about her that is easy to underestimate. No grand entrance, no fanfare, just a girl who had made up her mind. Those courts had already absorbed thousands of hours of Nadal himself, his sweat, his battles, his relentless self-improvement. And now she was there walking the same red dirt, breathing the same salt, air rolling in off the Mediterranean, learning the same system that had produced 22 Grand Slam titles. She was 13. Most kids that age are still figuring out friendships and music tastes. Alex was learning how to slide on clay, how to read a 3 shots before it happened, how to turn defense into offense through nothing but patience, precision, and sheer physical will. She stayed for 5 years. 5 years is not a visit. 5 years means the place gets into you, into your muscles, your instincts, your way of seeing the game. When she walked out of that academy in 2023, she did not truly leave it behind. The clay traveled with her in her footwork, in her mentality, in the quiet philosophy baked into every lesson she had ever received there. Here is what the conversation about Alex usually misses. Everyone talks about her movement, her forehand, the walls of noise that follow her like a traveling festival wherever she competes. But what goes unexamined is the foundation, the thinking underneath the shots. Clay is a teacher like no other surface. It slows the game down, which sounds forgiving, but is actually brutal. On clay, every mistake is visible. You cannot overpower your way through problems. You cannot blast your opponent off the court and call it a plan. Clay demands patience. The kind that fights against every competitive instinct you have. The kind that requires you to keep building, keep moving, keep trusting that if you stay disciplined, the moment will eventually arrive. Nobody in the history of tennis mastered that lesson better than Rafael Nadal. And nobody absorbed it more completely during those 5 years in Mallorca than Alex Eala. When she talks about clay being gritty, physical, demanding, when she talks about taking everything she can from Nadal's example, she is not reciting talking points. She is describing the actual blueprint of how she competes. The architecture of her game was built in his academy, using his methods on his courts. Now, we get to the moment that genuinely surprised me. November 2025. Nadal had been retired for exactly 1 year. His final match, a Davis Cup loss in November 2024, had closed the book on one of the most extraordinary careers in sports history. He had stepped away cleanly, built a quieter life, stayed off the courts the way someone does when they are genuinely finished rather than just resting. And then one morning at the academy, he picked up a racket for the first time in 12 months. Think about what that means at that level. Your hands never forget. The grip, the swing path, the precise feeling of the racket meeting the ball at full extension. The body holds on to all of it, even after a year of silence. And on that particular morning, the person standing across the net from Rafael Nadal, out of every player, every coach, every sparring partner he could have chosen, was a 20-year-old from the Philippines. What happened on that court was not ceremonial. There were no cameras being catered to, no Instagram moment being manufactured. Nadal coached her. He studied her forehand. The same shot he had spent 2 decades turning into one of the most feared weapons in the sport. And he gave her specific technical hard-won guidance from a man who understands that balls strike better than anyone alive. Alex has spoken about how locked in she was that day, how exhausted she felt afterward, how his intensity had not dimmed by a single degree despite a year away from competition. She described the tiredness as the kind that means something real happened, that she had been taken somewhere new. And here is what I keep returning to. Nadal did not have to do that. He is Rafael Nadal. He could spend every morning on a yacht, a golf course, or a terrace somewhere, and not a single person on earth would question it. Instead, he came back to a tennis court for the first time in a year and gave that session to a 20-year-old working on her forehand. That is not casual generosity. That is an investment. That is someone looking at another person and deciding deliberately that they are worth the energy. Alex knew exactly what it meant. She said it was a memory she would carry forever. And she said it the way people do, when the moment has actually earned those words. Fast forward to April 2026, Madrid. The Caja Mega. Alex walks on court and dismantles Anastasia Pavlyuchanova. 6-3, 6-3. Clean lines, efficient movement. The kind of match where the scoreboard barely captures what is actually happening because the real story is unfolding off the court entirely in the stands where Nadal is sitting with that expression on his face. The tennis world spent a lot of energy analyzing the match itself. But the more significant conversation required no microphone. It was conducted entirely through presence. Nadal said nothing publicly. He simply showed up. And in the language of mentorship, showing up is the loudest statement available. When someone who has earned the right to be anywhere in the world chooses to be exactly where you are watching exactly what you do, that communicates something words struggle to reach. Alex has admitted she still gets nervous around him. This, to me, is one of the most revealing things about her. They have trained together. He spoke at her graduation. She has received direct coaching from him on a court one-on-one. She knows him, and she still feels that feeling every single time. That is not insecurity. That is reverence. It is what happens when someone's presence reminds you of the full weight of what they have actually accomplished. Every match, every final, every court, they refuse to surrender. She gets nervous because she understands what he represents. And understanding is a different thing entirely from familiarity. You can know greatness and still be moved by it. Alex is moved by it every time. And honestly, that might be one of her most important qualities. The players who stop being moved by greatness are the ones who have already decided they have arrived. Alex has not decided that. At 20 years old, she is still looking at her idol with the same eyes she had at 13, walking through those gates in Morca for the first time, wondering if she belonged. She belonged then. She belongs. Now, here's the piece of this story that stopped me cold the first time I heard it. If you ask Alex what the single most important lesson Nadal has taught her is, she does not mention technique. She does not bring up clay court positioning or how to generate heavy topspin from a stretched position or how to manage a third set tie-break mentally. She talks about people. The advice Nadal keeps returning to what he said at her graduation. What he has reinforced repeatedly since is this: surround yourself with good people. That is it. 22 Grand Slam titles, 14 Roland Garros crowns. Matches against Federer and Djokovic at the peak of their powers. Careers worth of pressure, injury, and impossible situations navigated and overcome. And the thing he most wants to pass forward is be careful who you let into your circle. He says it because he knows that technique can be taught. You can improve a forehand. You can refine your movement patterns. You can study an opponent and adapt your tactics. But the voices in your head during a third set tiebreak, when the crowd is deafening, when you are one game from losing something that matters, those voices belong to the people you chose. You cannot rebuild that in a week. Nadal's inner circle stayed remarkably consistent across a career that spanned more than 2 decades. Same people, same values, same support system anchoring him through everything the sport threw at him. He is passing that wisdom on as the most foundational truth he knows, more fundamental than anything he could ever teach about the game itself. Alex has absorbed it. Her circle is small and deliberate. Her coach is a constant. Her family is present in the right ways. And somewhere at the edge of all of it sits Nadal. Not intruding, not hovering, but they're a presence that quietly says, "I see what you are building and it is worth building." There is something specific about competing in Spain as a Filipino athlete that deserves to be said plainly. The flags, the noise, the sheer moving wall of support that travels with Alex into every venue. It is extraordinary, but it also creates a weight that is difficult to describe until you have felt it personally. The crowd is not merely cheering. They are carrying you. And being carried is beautiful and exhausting in equal measure because you feel the full gravity of every person who believes in you. Nadal knows that weight. He spent his entire career carrying Spain at Davis Cup, at the Olympics, at every tournament where winning was expected not just for him, but for a nation. The parallels between his journey and hers are not coincidental. They are structural. The national pride, the academy roots, the clay court foundation, the intensity that never steps down voluntarily. When Nadal watches Alex, he is watching something he understands from deep inside his own experience. Not nostalgia, something more alive than that. He is watching a player navigate the same forces that once shaped him. And the outcome matters to him personally. The Madrid run ended in the second round. A loss to Elise Mertens 6 feet 2 inches 6-1 on a court assignment that stripped away much of the crowd support at precisely the wrong moment. The scoreline was hard, the conditions were frustrating, and Alex let her frustration show briefly, clearly when a shot clock warning interrupted her focus, and she stopped to push back before it could land. That moment said something real. She is not interested in losing gracefully. She expects more from herself, and she is willing to say so even when it costs her composure in front of a crowd. Nadal would have recognized it instantly. The fire that made him the greatest clay court player in history was never just physical. It was competitive, almost irrationally so. The refusal to accept that a situation is beyond your control. The insistence on contesting every inch, even the inches that nobody in the stands can see. Alex carries that same fire. The loss was not a verdict. It was information, data about where she is right now, and how far she still needs to travel. Watch how she processed it compared to how most 20-year-olds process a difficult defeat. She was not searching for comfort. She was searching for answers. That distinction is enormous. Players who look for comfort after losses build walls around themselves. Players who look for answers build games. And her game is still actively being built. She is 20 years old. Nadal's clay court record was not assembled in a single season or even a single decade. It was constructed through repetition, failure, adjustment, and the willingness to return to Roland Garros every spring and try again. Alex is at the very beginning of that process. She has the foundation. She has the mentorship. She has the philosophy. She has the work ethic that players who have shared a court with her describe as something that has to be experienced directly to be fully understood. And she has something else. Something that does not appear in rankings or statistics or match reports. She has Nadal watching. Not out of obligation. Not because his name is above the academy gates, because he sees something in her that he recognizes, something that reminds him of what the sport becomes. When someone brings everything they have to it. He picked up a racket after a year away and gave his first session back to her. He sat courtside in Madrid and watched her win, then watched her lose. And he kept watching. He has already told her the most important thing he knows. And it had nothing to do with tennis. And Alex, for her part, still gets nervous every time she sees him. She is still in some essential way that 13-year-old girl walking through the gates of his academy in Mallorca, suitcase in hand, dream intact, looking at the courts where her idol had built his legend and quietly asking herself whether she deserved to be there. She deserved to be there then. She deserves to be here now. And the 20 years ahead of her are going to tell a story that people are still going to be talking about long after the clay has dried. The flags have been folded, and the next generation arrives to learn what greatness actually demands. Nadal is not watching because he is unsure about her. He already knows the answer to that question. He is watching because the question he cares about now is bigger. He is watching to see whether she is ready to carry the full weight of what she is building. Whether she understands that the distance between promising and permanent is paved with exactly the kind of gritty, grinding, unglamorous clay court work she spent 5 years learning in Morca. Everything we have seen so far, the way she trains, the way she competes, the way she speaks about the people who shaped her, suggests she does understand, and so does he. That is why he keeps showing up.